The classical games of the Bill Chess Festival have resumed. Yesterday was played the fifth round of the Grandmaster Triathlon, the classical tournament. Now, the tournament is approaching the finish. There are two more rounds to play, and today there were a couple of huge results. So let's check what happened in yesterday's games. So first we are going to have a look at what happened in Alexienko's game against Noah Studer. So it appeared to be a theoretical dispute right at the start when the young Russian Grandmaster played the very topical English opening reverse Sicilian, the 4-9 variation. And after bishop c3, b takes on c3 is not the main move. Usually white plays queen takes on c3. And here the Swiss Grandmaster appeared to be really well prepared. He played a6, knight e7, threatening to play f5 and knight c5 at the same time. Now here Alexienko had to be careful and start with d3, not to miss any knight a5, knight b3 ideas. So knight a5 was played by Studer, bishop e3, queen e8, bishop e2, and bishop d7. Now, black is attacking the pawn on a4, and white has to make a big choice, either to take the knight on c5 or play bishop d1. Now here, Kirill played bishop d1, and now black was just in time to organize a counterplay the queen side by playing b5. Now the game got a little forced. A couple of trades on b5. Now the pawn on d3 is under attack, so bishop takes on c5 has to be played. Takes, short castle, and c4, and black manages to equalize the game. After bishop e2, takes on d3, takes on d3, and rook d8 was played by Studer, having completely equalized the game right at the opening. But of course, Alexienko is a big fighter, and he wouldn't let this go without a big fight. So he played queen e2, and here Studer played knight b3, which he said in a later interview that he wasn't quite happy with this move because he simply missed white's rook d1, and now black is appearing to be experiencing some issues. Now he managed to solve them all by making a very nice temporary pawn sacrifice, g6, queen d8, queen takes on c7, and despite the fact that white won a pawn, he cannot really hope for success because black is very active. Now knight e2 was played, attacking the pawn on e4, and after f3, knight c4, queen d8, queen a6, black is active enough to secure an equality. Now queen d3, queen b6 check, queen b3. Black's idea was to play knight b2, knight a4, try to win the pawn on c3 back as quickly as possible. Thus understandable that Alexienko tried to make something happen at the king side. He played king h3, knight b2, queen d2, and now black needs to watch out from queen g5 and knight f5 ideas, and this is why the Swiss Grandmaster played h6. Now g4 was a decent try for white. Knight a4, g5, queen e6 was played, capture on g5, and now the king goes to h7 to avoid any knight f5 ideas. The pawn on c3 is not going really anywhere. So far, the players were playing the perfect game. And here after queen d2, queen c6, knight g2, in a postmodern interview, Studer discovered that actually king g7 was the accurate move here. If white wants to play knight e3, only then black takes on c3 with the queen, effectively avoiding what happened in the game. Now instead he takes knight takes on c3 right away. And now the difference is that white is starting to create black some problems with either knight g4 or knight e5. Now here after knight b5, knight g4, black had to be quite accurate. Now here Studer managed to find a very nice activity and get something very close to draw's position. He played knight e4, sacrificing a pawn. After queen g5, knight e2 check, king h4. Alexienko is being very resourceful, creating problems for his opponent, plus he is threatening with knight f6 and queen h6 mate on the board. Now knight e4 was played here. Knight f6 will be met by king g7, so discarded what I said, it's not immediately gonna work. But here after queen e7, queen c4 again was a very nice resource, because sometimes if the knight goes to e5, now black has a fork on f5. Now knight f6 was played by Alexienko. knight e8 check, king g8, knight f6, king g7, and just as everybody was expecting already draw to happen, here Alexyenko continued to play on. Now, king h7 is played by Studer. He was slightly, perhaps, unhappy about his decision in post-Monter interview. He didn't really see exactly how to force an immediate draw. And after knight e5, knight f5 check, this was played. King g4, knight h6 check, king g3, queen f1. Studer's idea was to force a perpetual check. And this is again a move which he was a bit unhappy in the post-modern interview, because apparently he missed queen c5 and there is no perpetual check. Now after queen e1 check, it was Russians' time to deliver back the gift, and here after king g2, as Noel said in an interview, they probably would have played for something like 100 moves. Instead, Alexyenko showed the first signs of fatigue. He played queen f2, clearly with the idea to offer the queen trade and go for a knight send given next pawn, simply missing knight 5 check. So white has to take, because after king g2, knight e3, check, king g3, knight f1, it's simply draw with a perpetual check. And after e takes on f5, draw was agreed, because after queen e5, queen takes on f5, the position is dead drawn. Still a great game by both players. Actually it's well played, but we have to take into account it's been a very long chess festival, and indeed fatigue levels are starting to appear. Now in the second game, Boris Gelfand played a really amazing endgame, so let's get to that and explain how did they get there. Maxime Lagarde was trying to play a very sharp game in the opening. He played a very unorthodox e6, b6, bishop b4 check system. Now, Gelfand simply played solid chess, tried to avoid any complicated variations. Bishop a6, knight a3, d takes, bishop takes. And around here, white had established a solid advantage. After knight f6, f3 was a nice idea, pretty much excluding the black knight from joining any future action at the king side. Now queen e7, knight e2, short castle, c5 was played. And black appears to be slightly struggling because white is enjoying some space advantage and the knight on f6 is not really doing much. Still, black should be about okay, because after knight e7, rook d1, knight c6, the position simplified. Takes, takes, knight e4, takes, rook d8, rook d1, takes, and here it was the Frenchman's time to make the mistake. Now the most accurate defense here was to play king f8 with the idea to play king e7. And if white wants to penetrate the 7th rank by playing b4, then after knight a6, black attacks the pawn on b4 and is just in time to play king e7 next. Now instead here Maxime played b5, which appeared to be a very logical move because it's an active move. However, after knight e6, a6, b4, knight a4 and rook d2, now suddenly black is experiencing serious issues because white wants to play rook c2, rook c6 and black is very passive. So after rook d8, rook c2, this sequence most likely was missed by the French grandmaster. The knight on d6 cannot be taken because of rook c8 check. So here after king f8, rook c6, knight c3, the Frenchman tried to escape in the rook endgame. After rook a6, knight a2, takes, rook d6, rook a8 check, king e7, rook b8. They reached this position, and in the first move already, as it was revealed by Boris Gelfand in the post-mortem interview, probably Maxime made a mistake. He should have played right away f5, tried to trade away at least a couple of pawns, and after e takes, rook takes on b5. Now black can give a check and position the rook behind. Now instead, Lagarde played rook d1 right away. After king f2, rook d2 check, king g3, rook b2, rook takes on b5. Now, maybe f5 was already possible, but now white can play e5, and this is slightly something else. After king f6, h4, h5. Now, Gelfand's idea, as he said in the interview, was to position at the right moment rook b8, push the pawn on b7, and run towards the pawn with the king. And this is exactly what happened in the game. So Boris wasn't really sure was there a draw at some point or not. He showed quite a number of amazing variations in the post-mortem interview. However, Lagarde was going down ultimately. So b7 was played by Gelfand, and now here his idea is to go with the king to c1, then go to c5, then go to d6, attack the pawn on e5, and if black defends the pawn with rook b5, there will be king c6 attacking the rook on b5, defending the pawn on b7 and relieving the rook from b8. So there's the difference, having the 4 pawns at the king side, not 3. So the existence of the e-pawns on the board dramatically alters white's plan, because normally white is not playing b7. Now the Frenchman tried to make that stop. White's idea is to play f4, f6, take on e5, and then again march this idea, combined with various Zugzwang ideas. And here, yeah, Lagarde had nothing better. He tried to complicate matters by playing g5 and organize a pass pawn himself. After take, e5, Gelfand was merciless. He sacrificed the rook on g8 so that he can promote the queen with a check, take the rook, and put the second queen on the board. And despite the fact that the white king is exposed, black cannot deliver perpetual check because the queen will always guard it. So here he had to resign. Really spectacular endgame technique by the Israeli chess legend. Now the third game we are going to follow is going to be Sarin Nikal playing against Winston Kiemer. Two chess prodigies were playing against each other, because Sarin, he is only 17 years old and Winston is even younger, 16 years old, and yet they're here playing in Biel and playing really exciting chess. So what turned out to be some kind of a Nimzo-Indian defense. It was a theoretical dispute. Black sacrificed the pawn on c5 very quickly, d takes on c4, bishop d2, short castle, knight g3, and b6. Appeared to be a nice idea, as after queen f3. Now here, black can sacrifice the rook on a8 by playing queen e7. Quite an unexpected resource, because queen a8 fails to bishop e7, queen a7, and knight c6. Now instead, Sarin took on c4. B takes on c5, queen c2, knight d7, and short castle, appearing to have a slight edge, because black has a weakness on c5 he can always target. After bishop e7, rook d1, h5. Now the German showed some ambition here, clearly hinting at h4, h3, which was responded by knight e4, queen c7, knight f6, and f3. Now the position is quite solid, but black appeared to solve all of his opening problems. After bishop takes on d2, queen takes on d2, bishop d5, takes, and b4. Now here, most people are probably expecting that Kiemer will play c takes on b4, a takes on b4, rook e8, pretty much forcing the draw. However, he got slightly ambitious and played c4, having created a passed pawn. Now, in the hindsight, maybe that was not the best decision, because white managed to establish a slight positional advantage, because the knight on f6 is very passive, the knight on c3 is attacking the weakness on d5 and also helping white to push forward a queenside pawn. However, in practice, it appeared to be more difficult to achieve. Now, after a4, queen b4, rook a1, queen a5, now we were witnesses to a little bizarre moment, because the position here repeated at least 3 times. There you go. There you go. Yeah, and still the same position, and yet out of curiosity, none of the players claimed the draw, and they continued to play it out. After rook b1, it was Sarin who decided to decline the threat of repetition. However, it was already on the board, but he was unable to show anything. After knight f4, knight e2 goes back. He needs to block the c pawn. Rook e6, queen e7, queen c7. Black just kept waiting. The pawn on d5 cannot be taken, because black will always take on d5, recapture on e3, and the c pawn is going to be really powerful. So the young Indian kept researching chances. He couldn't find any, and at the start of the second time control, both players agreed to draw. Now, probably the most exciting game of round 5 in the Grandmaster Triathlon classical tournament was the game of Alain Pichot against the leader of the overall standings, Gata Kamsky. Now here, after e4, c6, Kamsky decided yet again to employ the Caracan. d4, d5, e5, bishop f5, h4, which was the system which surprised the American Grandmaster because he said Pichot pretty much plays anything. Yet he was hoping that his opponent could not have, essentially he had prepared the entire Caracan in just one day, probably expecting that Kamsky might play the Caro. So that's why Kamsky tried to surprise his opponent by playing queen b6, trying to steer the game to more unexplored paths which might have not been analyzed by his opponent. Now here, g4 was played. Obviously, the bishop cannot go to e4 because after f3, h5, it's lost. So bishop d7, now black wants to play h5, so this is why white played h5, securing himself some kind of a space advantage at the king side. c5, d takes, queen takes, and c3. Now white's idea was to play bishop e3, f4, knight f3 at some point, and then establish some kind of a French defense position and already some considerable space advantage at the king side. However, black has not played e6 just yet, and the pawn on g4 is under attack. After knight h6, bishop e2, knight c6, bishop e3, queen a5, the game got suddenly really sharp. Now white played f4, and instead of the positional e6, Kamsky got really ambitious and played f6, and rightfully so. Now, after b4, queen c7, the pawn on e5 is under attack, so the Argentine top 1 Grandmaster had to play b5, and knight d8, queen takes on d5, and after knight takes on g4, we have a really crazy position on the board, which is very difficult to evaluate from afar, but it should be about dynamic equality. Now, bishop d4 was played, knight h6 goes back, queen c4, offering queen trade, queen a5, knight e2, rook c8, queen e5, e6. All of these were really great moves. And here, after knight f5, the Argentine Grandmaster very quickly lost the game thread. He suddenly believed that he can win a pawn, and he played h6. And after g6, took the pawn on f6, which apparently was a huge mistake. Instead, he had to play knight f3 and continue development. However, after e takes on f6, appeared to be a temporary pawn sacrifice from black. After knight takes, c takes, bishop b4, black took completely over the game. The knight on d2 is under attack, and after rook d1 should castle, it's quite obvious that white is experiencing some serious issues to finish the development. Knight f3 was played, rook c3, queen b1, which was the move which was criticized by Gata in the post-mortem interview. He said queen b1 was not a great choice for black, for white. Instead, he should have tried to play queen b2. And after queen b1, bishop takes on b5, black already had a decisive attack. So here, Alain very quickly lost the game after queen e4, which was the final blunder, bishop c6, queen has to go away, queen e5, and rook takes on f3. Now, queen a5, bishop a5 doesn't change anything, and after bishop takes, black is simply up a lot of material, thus the Argentine Grandmaster had to resign. Now, what does it mean for the overall rankings? Now, thanks to his victory with the black color, Gata Kamsky has solidified his lead in the overall ranking, so he leads by 4 points, which essentially in a classical tournament means he is ahead of everybody else by 1 full point, and there are only 2 rounds to go. Kirill Alexeyenko probably is blaming himself for not using the opportunity to outplay Noel Studer, who sits on the 8th place by white color, so he made a draw and he sits on the 2nd place with 25.5 points, and now he's sharing it with Sarin Nikal, the Indian prodigy, who also has 25.5 points. Maxime Lagarde has fallen behind with 23 points, and Boris Gelfand is not really so far with 22 points. So the action resumes today with round 6. We have still 2 more rounds in the classical tournament. In the parallel, the MTO, the Masters Open tournament, is also still proceeding We are going to pay more attention during the live streams, what is happening at the live boards. Please stay tuned. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe to the channel. See you today in today's broadcast.